has come and passed. The innocent can never last. Wake me up when September ends. Like my father's come to pass. 7 years has gone so fast. Wake me up when September ends. Here comes the rain again, falling from the stars, drenched in my pain again, becoming who we are. As my memory rests, but never forgets what I lost. Wake me up when September ends.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Freedom on Deck on 94.9 News Now and Stimulating Talk. This is the Redneck Brian Bro, joined always by the mean one, Chet Martin.
I'll tell you, that music always gets me going. 9/11 is still in my heart, especially that the anniversary is going to be on a Tuesday, I think is really important because it happened on a Tuesday. I still remember where I was, the feelings that I had. And also we have, of course, CV Burton with us. And CV, where were you on 9/11?
My kids were getting on the school bus and I was having my driveway paved. I remember it just like yesterday. But anyway, I'm excited about the show today because it is the 3rd year anniversary of Freedom on Deck. So let's do it.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, and another thing, Brian, one of the most important things that we need to do, thinking about 9/11, is elect Republicans because Republicans keep you safe.
Absolutely. And, that's something that, you have to think about because for me, I look at, 9/11. I mean, especially right after 9/11 happened, our country was so unified. There were flags on everyone's home, on everyone's car, all over the place. I mean, you try to buy a flag, it was pretty tough because they were all sold out day after day after day. That was a time in our country's history that, this country really came together. And, there was no color. There was no right, left, Democrat, Republican. It didn't matter. It was American. That's it. That's all you were, was an American, and you were affected by what happened, and that's something that I wish we could get to a point to today with all this craziness that you're seeing from the left. And, you have car rammings down in Dallas. At a Fox affiliate building. I mean, you had, what was it?
Wyoming. There was a GOP office set ablaze.
Yep, set ablaze. You had, you have Maxine Waters calling, for violence. If you see anybody in the administration, surround them, create a crowd. You have Nancy Pelosi sitting there saying, "I can't believe there's not more uprising." You can't believe that there's not more uprisings across the country. Why would you want to see uprisings? And why would you not want to see the democratic process play out the way it was designed to be?
And not to forget all the violent imagery from Hollywood and from the leftist media against the president of the United States. Look, going back 17 years to 9/11 in 2001, we had a president that brought us down a bad path after that happened. It should have been resolved differently. It was not. We went into Iraq. We went after weapons of mass destruction that didn't end. Then, in effect, we got Barack Hussein Obama, who totally sent us down the path of no return, or so we thought. And then we elected Donald J. Trump in order to turn it around, because the result of Barack Obama's presidency was electing a businessman that was no nonsense, that was able to tell it like it was. And here we sit today.
Well, before 9/11, I considered myself kind of a centrist. I did believe in lower taxes and smaller government. But when 9/11 happened, I said, all right, the whole country is going to swing to the right. We're going to build a wall. We're going to deport all the illegals and yada, yada, yada. Never happened. The first thing Bush said was, Islam is a religion of peace. And he was just milquetoast. He fought the war with lawyers, tying the hands of our military. It was a disaster. And then you had Obama. And we didn't learn anything from 9/11 at all. And it was really sad. And then finally we got a president like Trump who understands. And he definitely took the lessons of 9/11 to heart.
Well, I hope so. There's some things that concern me right now going on the coast of Syria that we've seen that they've brought in some battleships over there, and we're waiting to see what the result of that's going to be. Nikki Haley went in front of the UN and spoke some pretty harsh words against Russia and Syria. And I worry about her, and I also worry about the neocon John Bolton, the walrus. I don't think we should get involved with any conflict in Syria right now. Yeah. I think eventually we've already made these false flag moves, bombing empty airports, things of this nature. Eventually you're going to have to hit them in a different area, right? You can't always bomb empty airports.
No, eventually you're going to have to, hit them, and there is going to be casualties, and that's going to spark a major conflict. And that's something that I don't think that we really need right now. Our country and our economy is going in the right direction. A war is not going to help that.
No.
And that's the last thing I want to see. What I'd like to see is some unification in our country. I'd like to see, though we disagree, like to see people, put down their pitchforks and their torches and their axes and have a conversation. Yeah. I understand, you're saying like good luck, because that's a hard thing to do right now with the climate. But I think that leadership, ultimately, people react to leadership. I think Donald Trump, and I really wish he would at this point, chill with the Twitter and really focus on being presidential. Really focus on not, they're going to attack you. Mm-hmm. You don't always have to punch back in an immediate way. Punch back in a positive way. Really hit them where it hurts.
Well, I with the chill with the Twitter, I think he kind of has, actually. I've been seeing that he's chilled out a little bit with the Twitter. But, man, I mean, look at what's going on. We were talking about a truck ramming into a Fox building. Then they're lighting buildings on fire. Don't forget, Steve Scalise got shot, almost murdered by a leftist lunatic who was a big-time Bernie Sanders supporter. And they're getting this messaging from the leaders of the Democrat Party. And you can't tell me they're not. I mean, to me, what Maxine Waters did is punishable in the court of law, I think. I think the woman should be arrested for promoting violence to American patriots that support the president and his agenda. And it is happening. Kids are being attacked. People are getting beat up, punched in the middle of nowhere. Cars are being, tires stabbed, all that. It really is a worry.
I'm happy with Trump's tweets. I just want to put that out there.
Well, listen, we got to wrap it up. We're going to come back. When we come back, we're going to be talking about Kavanaugh and the hearings for his confirmation. They are disgusting. Don't turn the dial. 94.9 News Now and Stimulating Talk.
Thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Freedom on Deck. This is WJJF, rocking your dial, 94.9 News Now and stimulating talk. We're going to get into this Kavanaugh hearings. I mean, I don't know about you gentlemen, but what a sham.
I am Spartacus. I'm sorry.
What a sham. I mean, this poor man has been he's been an attorney. He has been an active judge for, I mean, the last 12 years he's been on the bench, and he was unanimously confirmed by both the left and the right.
Worked for the Bush administration.
Hello.
Yeah, exactly.
They pulled out all the stops. The Democrats were paying protesters to come in, and 2 doctors that I saw up on the Daily Caller said that they were paid to leave in order for 2 protesters to come in. Now, you know, the Democrats, I'll give them credit, guys. They do what it takes to inflict pain. But for me, it's just an act of desperation. You had one of these protesters that were so unhinged, and I'm sorry to say it this way. She came in with a pair of shorts on that supposedly in the front was garnered with her menstrual blood.
Oh, yeah. And I'll tell you, and it was on her leg and everything else. So, I mean, the cops had gloves on. I mean, It's ridiculous.
And abortion blood. We don't know what the blood is.
Well, that's true. And, you know, you also had Linda Sarsour being bussed in, screaming like a banshee, screaming like one of the Manson women from the 1960s. You had all these other protesters that were cursing, and it got to the point where Brett Kavanaugh's children had to leave. They had to be escorted out by the police because it got so nasty in there.
Yeah.
And these people are just unhinged. They don't make any sense to me. What are they thinking?
Well, the craziness is, like you said, I mean, especially with the one woman. I mean, now I get it, you know, and obviously a lot of that is symbolism because, you know, they're afraid that Roe v. Wade is gone after, you know, after Kavanaugh is confirmed, which is, it's not. That's not going to be the case, you know. So I don't understand where their heads are at. It doesn't make any sense. But the thing that I take away from this more is, when did any Republicans act this way when it was Obama's appointees to the court?
Sotomayor?
Yeah.
Nothing. It was barely televised. It happened in the middle of the night.
But I'm saying, were there Republicans that were screaming?
No.
Was this big charade? Were there people protesting and screaming and interrupting? Did you have Republicans threatening to release emails of hers?
No.
And willing to be expunged from the Senate to do so? I mean, what a spectacle.
And Cory Booker is saying, I don't care if I defy the rules of the House and all this stuff. If I release the emails, it's not against the rules to release the email. There's nothing wrong with it. So he's pretending like he's doing something heroic.
Here's what happened. Cory Booker, as we all now know, is now Spartacus. He dramatically charged that Judge Kavanaugh is in favor of racial profiling in the name of security, but against it when it comes to affirmative action. A big leftist call to arms. Booker provided an email that confirms Kavanaugh is, in fact, against racial profiling. Cory didn't read before he put it out, and it went against what Cory was saying. Judge Kavanaugh was for this profiling. Not true at all. I mean, and this is the face of the Democrat Party right now. This is the guy they want to run in 2020, either him or the camel from Harris.
Can I just make one quick point about the profiling? It's actually racist not to use profiling in law enforcement, because when you're coddling race, you're subverting justice. So that in itself is racist. It's the opposite of what he's saying. To hide the race is racist.
Well, I mean, let's put it into even a better perspective. The emails that he was threatening to release, okay? Now, obviously, They were, they were confidential emails. And according to Article 5 of the Senate rules, if they're classified as confidential emails, no member is allowed to release them or disclose them. But here's the kicker: is that Corey, that I would like to use the word idiot,
Isn't Corey a woman's name?
He already had permission by the Bush administration, to allow him to release those emails, because the emails that he wanted to release, he had sent over and got clearance to release them in the first place. So he knew he had the clearance to release them. Right. He was just grandstanding and acting like a tough guy.
I know.
But meanwhile, it was all...
That's what I was saying.
It was all farce.
And you said it better than I did.
The worst part about it was so corny. Like when
Corny
I watched
Booker.
I'm going to release the emails. I don't even care.
Corny Booker.
Yeah. Corny Booker?
Yeah. Corny Booker is retardicus.
Booker, I hardly even know her.
Oh,
they're so unhinged. And I listened to Miss Harris speaking as well to Kavanaugh. And you know what? He played it like Cool Hand Luke.
Yeah,
that was a great movie.
I have to tell you, Brett Kavanaugh, he really impressed me.
Oh, he's poised, man.
He's poised. He spoke eloquently. He was not fazed by any of the things they threw at him. I don't know if I could have done what he did. For everybody coming in and screaming constantly. And second of all, I will say this. For Graisley to not shut that hearing down and tell him to get them the hell out of there and shut it off to the public is an embarrassment. And Orrin Hatch said it himself. He's like, can we get a hold of this here?
Hold on. But play devil's advocate, because at the same time, going into the midterms, you are showing exactly how unhinged the left is. You are letting them show their true colors, and you are allowing the American people to be able to take that information and that knowledge and go to the polling booth on November.
But the weakness of the GOP is best illustrated when the left were saying, are you asking Kavanaugh, will you be loyal to the Constitution or will you be loyal to Trump, as if it's mutually exclusive? Trump is all about the Constitution. That's why he picked Kavanaugh in the first place.
Well,
but they were playing into it. They were allowing it. They were answering it like it was a legitimate
question. That's why we elected Trump, because he's all about the
weakness of the GOP. That's
but you got to keep in mind that they're trying to trip him up. That's the reason that they're trying to trip him up. You know what I'm saying? They ask these stupid questions to try to get him to say something that he doesn't mean or misstepped.
But he almost agreed with them that there's a choice between the Constitution and Trump. It's not mutually exclusive. It's a joke.
Well, I think he was trying to be careful. And, sometimes when you're asked these questions and it's your first go around.
No, he's caught off guard.
He was caught a little bit off guard. So, listen, I think the guy's, he wasn't my first choice. He wasn't even my last choice, but he's the choice that President Trump made. And I think he's a good choice. And I think he handled himself fairly well.
Amen.
Listen, come on back. We're going to have the voice of freedom, Lee Elci, coming on our 9/11 memorial show. And we're going to be talking about Kate Steinle. And we're going to be talking about Molly Tibbetts. And why have they been swept under the rug by the media? Come on back to Freedom on Deck.
These hands
Welcome back to 94.9 News Now and Stimulating Talk. Freedom on Deck. Chet Martin here, along with Brian Bro and C.V. Burton. It's our 9/11 Memorial Show, and our first guest to today's program is the host of the hit radio program heard Mondays through Fridays, 6 to 10, the one and only voice of freedom, Lee Elci. Lee, thanks for joining us on our 9/11 tribute show and also our 3-year anniversary show. You were the guy that pushed to get our program on WJJF when it was just a little podcast, and we thank you for that.
Well, listen, thank you guys for having me on both your birthday show / anniversary show and, of course, looking back at 9/11. I'll tell you, man, you guys, I think I said this last year, but I have to say it again. Every year, just better and better. You guys are fabulous, man. So it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning for you guys. Continued success.
It is. It's only the beginning. And Lee, it feels like the memory of 9/11 has faded from the American consciousness. And I'm disappointed in the realization that the younger generation doesn't realize what a tragic event the World Trade Center attack was. Do you feel the day has been forgotten somewhat, Lee?
I definitely do, Chet. I don't think there's any question. I think if you just open up your paper, your local paper on Tuesday morning, you're going to find that maybe if you're lucky, you'll get a headline. But I would doubt that you'll even get that. My guess is, third, fourth, fifth, eighth page, they'll have some kind of a story about 9/11 and a tribute. Maybe this year's a little different because I think this year's the first year that the Freedom Tower is open. But I think in a general sense, I think you're probably right. I think sadly people have forgotten about 9/11.
And it's the first year in a long time that it's fallen on a Tuesday, which we all remember that it happened on a Tuesday. That kind of has some significance, doesn't it?
I would think so. I mean, I think we all look back and remember where we were that day. In fact, I think in the past, well, since this is the 17th year, in the past, I've been on in the air pretty much ever since. And every year I do something, we play some audio. I think year 5, year 10, and year 15, we really had, big shows that were entirely dedicated to 9/11, where we had folks tell everybody where they were. I think everybody can remember, where they were, what they were doing, and who they were with, and the whole scenario, how it unfolded. To those of us who are like our age or a little bit, like you're a little younger than me, but anybody who's old enough to remember, I mean, they're still affected. You see the pictures, you hear the audio, you just have a gut reaction. But the kids, I mean, anybody who was under the age of 10 or 12, they were just babies, and they're now in their mid-20s or late 20s, and they probably don't look at it the same way we do.
It feels, Lee, like the media controls what we pay attention to. And one story that was covered and then forgotten very quickly was the murder of Molly Tibbetts. Lee, she was killed and raped by an illegal immigrant, as you know. Why hasn't her murder caught on as much as Kate Steinle's did at the time when it took place? Because Kate's memory was, it feels like it was more than this. Have we just become accustomed to this type of thing happening in the country?
That's a good question. I think I would say the first response to that would be her father, if memory serves me correct, came right out and wanted to make sure that nobody held folks who are either illegals or that denomination responsible. So that was like the first thing that we remember from the parent, which was a little surprising because normally if you're in that situation, you're mad as hell and you're angry and, you just want some kind of vengeance or justice. But he came out and did sort of the exact opposite. Now, I don't know if the narrative from the media has changed. I mean, I don't think there was a lot of play with Kate Steinle. It's just the right just kept pushing and pushing that story until it really became more mainstream. So, I mean, her story is just terrible. It's just a horrible story for, a young woman getting murdered by an illegal. But here's something to think about. I think the left doesn't understand the concept that she would be alive today if that guy wasn't here. They don't get that. They don't grasp that. It's not that we're against immigrants. We're against illegals. If that person is not in the country, she's alive today.
Well, and also, Lee, I feel like liberals are always quick to defend illegal criminals, including these murderers. And one of their big defenses
of these animals, forgive me for saying that, because animals are much better than these people, is that most of violent murders in this country are committed by Americans, to which I always say, Lee, I would hope so. Why do you think liberals get upset when their illegal status is brought into the discussion, Lee?
Well, I don't. That's another great question. I just think that everyone wants to say votes, voting this, voting that. I'm not so sold that it's votes. I don't think they get the same grasp, this common sense concept that folks on the right get. I think we live our life in the real world. They live in some kind of utopia where, 7 billion people can get free health care and 7 billion people can be guaranteed with a roof over their head and a full belly. That's not the real world. We cannot take care of the entire planet. And, we got to make sure we're safe, because the folks that are getting in here, not all of them are doctors and lawyers and, want to be Masons and want to be scientists. A lot of them are bad folks, and we got to pay attention to that. I don't think they get that. I don't think they quite understand that.
I think, Lee, the election of Trump has brought, and I will say this is a good thing. It's really shined a light on who they are, because you see a lot of these women like Cortez winning in New York, and the gentleman that's running in Florida for governor. These are extreme socialists, and I never thought it would get to the point where the Democrat Party would be pushing for these extreme leftists like they are, but they are pushing for that right now.
A lot more than I've ever seen. I'm not really sure if that is more the exception than the rule, because when push comes to shove, folks got to go out there and vote for Cortez or Ortiz-Cortez or whatever, and these other folks. And I don't know if they're going to pull the lever for her when really the rubber hits the road. I think when they think about the idea that a big chunk of their paycheck may be missing if she became, a congresswoman or even worse. I mean, I think they'd have to think twice about all of that. But yeah, Chet, I think there are a lot of folks out there who push hard for socialism. I don't think they understand what it actually means. I don't think they understand that it takes away from people's desire to be better people. I don't think they get that either. So there's a big difference, certainly a big physiological, psychological, and sociological difference between the two.
Well, and one of the things that kind of frightens me is I have a lot of moderate liberal friends, and some of them are on my social media pages, and we talk. And these moderate liberals, moderate Democrats, I've seen throwing their support behind Cortez, and I've asked them, I thought you were against socialism, and they say, well, there's time for a change. We've come to a fork in the road with the election of President Trump, and I say, but most moderate Democrats still should embrace capitalism, right?
I would think so. I certainly moderates should. No question about that. But maybe you've tuned in tapped into something that I haven't quite got to. Most of my friends are extreme liberals, so they come right out of the gate calling me a racist and all the other wonderful things that are associated with that. So the moderate liberal, maybe that person is moving further to the left. You might be onto something. That's a distinct possibility. No question about it.
We have Lee Elci, the voice of freedom, on with us. Now, Lee, both sides try to put a number on the death toll of Americans by illegal immigrants to fit their agenda. That's definitely happening. But isn't the bottom line that one death is too many?
I would think so. I would feel the same way with our military. I would feel the same way with a mother who is protecting her baby or her young son or daughter in Chicago. One is always too many, because if it's your one, it means a lot more. I mean, if somebody in your family, Chet, or somebody in your friend's family that happened to get killed, or was had the result of a violent crime against them, of course, to me, there is no room for that. And America should always be first. Americans should always be first. And, we should always respond with fire and fury, if you will, when horrible things happen to American citizens. I think. I mean, that's what it's all about. And safety first.
Absolutely. Now, your 9/11 memorial show is coming up on Tuesday, and that's, like I said, the significance of it being on a Tuesday is kind of important. And you always do such a fantastic job to honor the memory of those lost on that fateful day. So what do you have planned, Lee?
Well, we have our regular guests that we normally have. We don't have a lot of Tuesday guests anyway, but I'd go back, play some audio, play some. I'm trying to find some different things that we haven't already heard before, but a lot of it we've already played. And I'm going to have Simmons. Rob has a great story about 9/11. I'm going to replay that for everybody. So we'll do a lot of what we normally do. Just try to make sure that we take time out to remember something. Certainly in my lifetime, it's been the biggest event in my lifetime without question, and it's probably the biggest event that ever happened in this country.
Lee, thanks a lot for coming by on the 3-year anniversary, man.
All right, but hey, listen, guys, I'm proud of you guys. You guys are killing it. So keep doing it, and your show is fantastic. Thanks again.
We will. Everybody, that was Lee Elci, the voice of freedom. You hear him Mondays through Fridays right here on 94.9 News Now and Stimulating Talk. Come on back. We're going to be doing more of the 9/11 Memorial Show.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to 94.9 News Now and Stimulating Talk. Okay, I mean, with that intro, I'm sure you guys are going to be able to figure out what we're going to be talking about here.
If anyone knows.
If you're just tuning in, we had a plane that came in this week from the United Arab Emirates, from Dubai. It was 520 passengers, okay, were swarmed by police vehicles and ambulances, immediately quarantined for an assessment by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Passenger Aaron Sykes posted videos of officials wearing masks and gloves, taking the temperatures of passengers on the tarmac. You had 106 people that ended up sick on this plane. You had 10 people that were taken to area hospitals because of how gravely ill they were.
Squirts.
And they ultimately came down to them, the CDC and the federal government, saying that the passengers were suffering from the flu. There is no way that 106 people contracted the flu 7 to 10 days before the flight and all emerged on one flight to New York.
Word to your mother, because the biggest part of this story is the fact that Vanilla Ice, the Iceman, was on the flight. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't get any weirder than that. And I actually watched the video that Vanilla Ice took, and he was like, yo, this is mad serious. And it showed all the people running to the back. And from what I gather you told me, is that these people were so sick that they had diarrhea, intense diarrhea.
These people were, there was one woman on the flight that said that towards the end of the 14 and some odd hour flight, that the bathrooms were unusable.
Now, they said 10 people were sent to the hospital, but the original report was that there were 100 sick on the plane.
Correct. All the people that other than the 10, all the rest of the people were allowed to carry on with their journeys to their destinations, wherever they were going.
What happened here? You know, it makes me wonder, coming from Dubai, whether this was a failed chemical attack, a failed terrorist chemical attack on this plane that is now being swept under the rug.
It's not even that failed. They pretty much hit their target, because if they were trying to poison them, they did a pretty good job.
Now, I was reading from somebody that was on the line that previously to getting on the plane, when they were being checked and their cargo was being checked and everybody was being patted down, that people were coughing and sneezing and carrying on and had fevers. You know, if you have multiple people with these symptoms outside of the plane, supposedly, I don't know if I necessarily believe this, account. Why would you let them on the plane? Why would you let 20 to 30 people on the plane if they're showing symptoms that bad? Doesn't make any sense to me.
What is the symptoms of sarin gas, by the way? Isn't it something where your body expels the
sarin gas, which is what was happening in Syria,
fills your lungs with fluid and causes diarrhea and everything? Isn't that similar to this?
Yes.
So maybe it was sarin.
That's why I'm asking the question.
That's why I'm saying
could it have been a chemical attack with this type of gas that maybe didn't fully, take hold?
You think maybe something through the
ventilation,
through the ventilation system?
Maybe.
There's also chlorine.
Because
it's chlorine type gas.
You got to think of it this way. There's just, like I said, for anybody out there that's listening that doesn't understand how people get the flu, it takes 7 to 10 days to incubate. Yeah. So once you're
not just getting it
right. Once you're exposed, it takes 7 to 10 days for you to start getting the symptoms and the feeling under the weather, and then it's another 7 to 10 days of being sick before you start feeling better and your body goes through this. So it's like from getting exposed to actually feeling better is like anywhere from 14 to 21 days.
I think it was an inside job. All it takes is like a teaspoon of the stuff to put into the ventilation system. Comes out through the vents. It's instantaneous.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You got a plane coming from Dubai. And here's the other thing. When Brian brought it to my attention, I had heard about the story, but I said to myself, when you said we were doing it as a topic, I'm like, wow, this story's really gone dead. So then when I started to look into it, I'm getting articles about Vanilla Ice being on the plane and all that. But all the accounts are from 2 days ago. You can't get anything like from yesterday or from, a few hours ago. It's all from 2 days prior, and there's no leads up till today.
Well, and I'll tell you,
so it's kind of gone dead.
When I was watching the news yesterday morning, they you had CBS, touched on it, I guess they're one last time there, and they're just, saying that they were still that the victims were still continuing to be treated at local area hospitals. The 10 victims. No, it wasn't 10. It wasn't 10 people. All right, well, they didn't say victims. I mean, 10. The
10 that got ill.
The 10 that got ill. 10 passengers. They said.
Mm-hmm.
So they reported it as 10 passengers. It wasn't 10 passengers. It was 106 people. Yes, only 10 were taken to area hospitals because of how gravely ill they were, that they needed that kind of medical attention. So this is bigger than the flu, people. Mm-hmm. Way bigger. And we better start waking up and figuring it out, because if we're going to allow ourselves to be lied to, because I think that is exactly what's going on here, that we are being lied to. We are not being told the whole story.
We're always being lied to.
Because I'll tell you this, if it was a terrorist attack, they don't want us to know it.
Yeah.
They would not want us to know it. They would try to downplay it because people would be in a panic to get on the next flight anywhere.
It's frightening to know that there is a arm of the media that is propaganda in a way of hiding information from you. Mm-hmm. Back in World War II, when Hitler did it, it was to promote information. With the media in the United States of America, what they're doing is they're hiding this information from you.
Cherry picking.
Which is just, worse than cherry picking. I mean, for God's sakes, you see them working hand in hand with some of these radical judges over in New Mexico, where they'll report on the story, but they'll drop it really quick. It's the same thing that happened in Las Vegas. They reported on the story. They gave us such little detail. And then when it came time and they did all the investigating, including the sheriff and including the police department and the FBI, they told us there was no motive. You've got to be kidding me that Las Vegas had no motive and no reason.
Yeah, right.
The guy had no reason to do what he
No
did.
motive that they're willing to admit to.
Whether or not there were other shooters, which I believe there was definitely a motive.
Oh, absolutely.
And my thought process as soon as it happened was kind of weird that it happened at a country music event.
Yeah.
When you tied into the brother that was an extreme leftist and the wife who was previously married to an extreme leftist. I believe that Paddock, along with others, was targeting that country music festival as a terrorist attack.
Of course.
And the reason they're hiding it, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, and the reason they're hiding it, the motive, is because to admit it would be admitting that the left stream media is inciting these kind of violent attacks against conservative patriots and Christians.
Well, one point that I wanted to bring up with the plane that, just came to my mind as as you guys were talking, they also said that crew members and that the pilots also were sick. So those pilots, they wouldn't have been in Dubai. They would have flown from somewhere else into Dubai to pick up those people to move on to New York. So how did they get sick?
Well, it tells you when they picked whoever it was up from Dubai, that's when whatever happened.
Well, if it's the flu, how did the flu is instantaneous now?
No.
So the pilots landed in Dubai to refuel and pick these people up, and became gravely ill in a moment.
It would tell you it's a chemical attack.
Exactly. And how come it bugs me that it's quiet. It's too quiet.
Because if they can hide it, they will. It's only when they have to admit it that they won't. That's all. It's as simple as that. It's frightening.
I think
it's propaganda, pure and simple.
I think what's going to be telling is if you start hearing reports of people that were on that flight dying.
The propaganda of silence.
If they'll tell you that.
Remember we talking about the propaganda of silence?
Yes.
Where the media won't report on a story, and if we on the right talk about it, it makes us look like we're crazy.
That's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is, and it's happening here. Listen, we've got a big guest coming up for our 9/11 anniversary show, and we hope everybody is having a good time out there. But we have Brigitte Gabriel. You've seen her on Sean Hannity. She's all over Fox News. She's a New York Times bestseller, and she has the new book Rise coming out, and you're not going to want to miss this one. Come on back to Freedom on Deck.
Welcome back, everyone, to Freedom on Deck on 94.9 News Now and Stimulating Talk. Chet Martin here. You're rocking with the best in Connecticut, Long Island, and Rhode Island. It's our 3-year anniversary. We appreciate you being here. And also, we're remembering 9/11, of course. And our next guest is a hero of mine, terrorism expert and chairman of Act for America, the largest national security grassroots organization in the United States, and the author of the new book, Rise, due out on September the 11th. New York Times best-selling author, Brigitte Gabriel. Brigitte, it's such an honor to have you on the program, ma'am.
Oh, thank you so much, Chet. I'm delighted to be with you.
So tell our listening audience about your new book, Rise, in defense of Judeo-Christian values and freedom.
Well, I wrote the book Rise because America as we know it is being transformed before our very eyes. The flag that once flew on every street corner is now considered a hate symbol on college campuses. Athletes who used to break out in tears of pride during the national anthem are now kneeling in protest. Patriotism is seen as hateful. Freedom of speech is being eliminated by the tyranny of tolerance. And police are being targeted by criminals while the mainstream media victimizes their killers. Our public schools are used to promote Islamic propaganda inside the classrooms, and unvetted immigration is rampant, and Christmas is under assault. Our nation is at a crossroad of irreversible consequences, and the Judeo-Christian American values it was founded upon are under attack both from abroad and from within. Who would have thought that 17 years after 9/11, we're not only going to be worried about Islamic terrorists and enemies from abroad attacking us, but we're going to be worried about Americans born and raised Antifa thugs who hate this country so much that they are willing to kill, to destroy, to attack, to damage property, that Black Lives Matter will be attacking and killing our police, that MS-13 gangs will be roaming our streets. And this is why I wrote Rise, to light a fire under every American who cares about this country, to not only understand the problems we are dealing with, but also what they can do about the problem and how they can make a difference for the country.
Brigitte Gabriel is on with us. She is the author of the new book, Rise, which is out on September the 11th. Brigitte, there's a war on Christianity coming from the Democrats to the media, to the Hollywood elitists, to groups like Antifa. How do we fight back against a big, monumentous mountain like that?
Well, look, they are against everything our founding fathers stood for. And by the way, Judeo-Christian values are basically the foundation of Western civilization. They are the bedrock of Western civilization. Whether you are religious or not, we have atheists in our country who teach their little children, Johnny, do not lie. Johnny, treat others the way you want to be treated. These are American values. These are Judeo-Christian values, whether you're practicing or not. But these values are under assault. Who would have thought in America today, Chet, we're going to get to a point where you can't even tell people Merry Christmas. You tell people Merry Christmas and they give you a dirty look. Thank God we have someone like Donald Trump in office who made it fashionable to say Merry Christmas again. Our children, they cannot even say they are on Christmas break. Right now it's called winter break or a spring holiday. We can no longer identify holidays by their names, despite the fact that we start 2 months prior to Christmas decorating the malls, advertising about the season for giving. Let's celebrate the season, and everybody's shopping and everybody's selling gifts, but no one wants to tell anybody Merry Christmas at the stores because they don't want to offend anybody, yet you're standing there buying Christmas presents. This is what I'm talking about. We have now Antifa thugs who are willing to lie, cheat, kill, attack, to advance their end goal without any regards to any of the principles that our nation was founded upon. Since when is lying? How did we go from George Washington saying, I don't tell a lie, about him cutting the cherry tree, to the point right now where we have leaders who lie through their teeth, including leaders at the FBI, at the CIA. Look what's happening in the country right now. Whatever happened to the values of George Washington? Whatever happened to the values of our founding fathers? This is exactly what we are dealing with as a society. But in my book, Rise, I not only discuss the problems, whether it is immigration. I have a chapter titled Replacement Civilization about what's happening in the West. I have a chapter about the death of free speech, titled The Death of Free Speech. I have a chapter titled Operation Indoctrination, about the lies we are telling to our children in our public schools. And not only I give the problem, but at the end of every chapter, I have a section titled Rise Up and Act, where I give you tips and things you can do as a citizen to make a difference for the country. 3 things you can do under 10 minutes that will make a difference for the country.
Brigitte, Linda Sarsour of CARE said some very disturbing things aimed towards you. Now, I don't want to get into what she said, but what's the danger of a woman like this, a woman from CARE, masquerading as a women's rights champion, and why has the Women's March embraced CARE like this, Brigitte?
Oh my goodness, what a great question. In my book, Rise, I have a chapter titled The Leftist Islamist Coalition, where they are working together. It's the enemy of my enemy is my friend. This is exactly why you see extremely conservative Islamic organizations like CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, working hand in hand with the ACLU because they have a common enemy. And the common enemy is people like you and me and our listeners who love our country, who stand up for our American values and our freedoms, including our freedom of speech. Even if that offends somebody, we will fight for their right to say things that offend us because we understand the importance of having diversity of opinion in our country and understand the principle of come, let's reason together and debate ideas. And we can agree to disagree while respectfully agreeing that it is your right and my right to exchange ideas we vehemently abhor, but we respectfully agree to disagree. But right now what's happening is we are seeing people like Linda Sarsour, who is an extremist Islamist, working together and funded financially, not just supported, because, we stand with you, we work together, for multiculturalism and blah, 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 all these leftist, buzzwords that they use.
Yeah.
But right now, Linda Sarsour is being funded by Planned Parenthood, the ACLU, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and these types of organizations.
Brigitte, I wanted to tell you, I Googled you and Linda Sarsour prior to the interview. One of the first things that came up for you was author and right-wing extremist. And for Linda Sarsour, it came up feminist and women's advocate. It's so sick the way that the internet labels conservatives and then goes on the other side, and someone that's basically pro-Hamas calls them a champion of women's rights.
Exactly. A champion of women's rights. This is the lady that believes that we should be like Saudi Arabia and the way we treat our women. That women have more rights in Saudi Arabia, and actually in America we should strive to be like people in Saudi Arabia. This is what the left calls a woman as an example for other girls to follow. Look, Glamour magazine named Linda Sarsour Woman of the Year. Woman of the Year, Linda Sarsour. But this is what's happening in the country right now. And this is exactly what I discuss in my book, and about how we are losing our children, how we are losing our people who are being completely brainwashed.
We have author of the new book, Rise in Defense of Judeo-Christian Values and Freedom, Brigitte Gabriel. Brigitte, I know you're very busy. You're on a whirlwind tour, and we appreciate you stopping by. I just wanted to ask you one last question before you go. I wanted to ask you about Muslims in America and the push for Sharia law possibly being enforced, because, Sharia law looks like something we can expect eventually in states like Minnesota, Michigan, and others. How do we thwart that from happening in our country?
Well, I'm sad to tell you that we have already documented 143 cases in the United States where Sharia law was used instead of the Constitution of the United States in 22 states. 22 states. Most people have no idea what's happening in America. Actually, the first Sharia court was established in Richardson, Texas prior to September 11th. And this is what we are dealing with. This is exactly why my organization, Act for America, has introduced a law called American Laws for American Courts, which says that no foreign law that is not compatible with the United States Constitution would not be allowed to be used in any American courtroom. And the reason why we said foreign law instead of specifically Sharia law is because we wanted American companies that do business with foreign companies, if they need to get into litigation, they will be able to use the law of that country as long as it is compatible with the United States Constitution. But But introducing that law will make sure that Sharia law will not continue to operate in America because it is not compatible with the Constitution. I'm proud to tell you that we have been able to pass that law in 13 states so far, and we started working on the states because under Obama, we knew that we couldn't even bring up the subject in Congress because it will be shut down. So we had to go the state route in trying to pass enough legislation in enough states where we will be able to introduce such a law in Congress. But the fact, Chet, that you and I are even discussing introducing a law that would make it illegal to use any law that is not compatible with the Constitution in American courtroom should give you a sign of what the times that we are in right now, and more the reason why people need to rise up and act, and they need to get my book Rise and read it and understand what we have at stake and what we can do as citizens to become instrument of change for our country.
Brigitte, Gabriel, thank you so much for coming on with me. We know this weekend's important to you. It's important to us. It's important to all of our listeners. Please tell them where to go and check you out and where to get the book.
The book is available at Amazon.com and in every place where books are sold, Barnes & Nobles, Walmart, everywhere else. But you can go immediately to Amazon.com and get the book.
On 9/11.
On 9/11.
Everybody that was...
But they can order it now. They don't even have to wait.
Yeah, you just get the pre-order. Absolutely. I'm going to go get out and get it myself. Everybody that was the wonderful, one and only Brigitte Gabriel, please come back to Freedom on Deck on our 9/11 Memorial Show.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure being with you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Freedom on Deck, 94.9 News Now and Stimulating Talk. This is craziness. You have companies that are getting involved. These are clothing companies, Nike, now Levi. This is a crazy story. Levi Strauss teams up with Gun Control Group. We simply cannot stand by silently. The American denim giant Levi Strauss & Company announced Tuesday that it is launching a series of new initiatives to benefit groups working to prevent gun violence. Levi Strauss CEO and President Chip Burr wrote in Fortune on Tuesday that the company simply cannot stand by silently when it comes to issues that threaten the very fabric of the communities where we live and work. I mean, this is just crazy to me. When Levi's, came out, and I mean, you're talking a long time ago in this country, it was denim that was designed and made for people who were working in mining. Coal miners and gold miners and different things like that. It was work apparel because it could hold up to the rigors of mining and being roughed up and everything else. You have to think about that. Back then, everyone had a firearm. Everyone carried a pistol, a shotgun, or some sort of a repeater rifle. I mean, it's just craziness to think that a company that started in those times would take this stance today.
Well, I won't be buying my children Levi anymore. I won't be buying my children Nike apparel anymore after they decided to make Colin Kaepernick the face of their franchise. But, it goes both ways. There's an athletic store in Colorado that is permanently liquidating all of its Nike sneakers. There's also one in New York that's doing the same thing for the very reason that Nike picked up Kaepernick as their new face. And actually, the commercials have already come out. I don't know if you guys have seen them yet. I did see one of them, and it's ridiculous. But listen, what we do as the consumer is we stop buying their crap. We stop buying Levi. We stop buying Nike. We stop watching the NFL. We stop drinking Coca-Cola if they're putting out a Black Lives Matter pro-can or whatever these liberal groups decide to do. For some reason, they're willing to take the hit, you know?
Well, just like all leftist policies, the Levi's stance on guns makes absolutely no sense. They want gun-free zones so that people who are shopping for jeans will be safer. Explain to me why those malls that were shot up, the schools that were shot up, they were all gun-free zones. How come they weren't safer? They were gun-free zones.
Because it's a myth.
It's a myth. It's mindless.
Well, it's crazy because the company will donate more than $1 million over the next 4 years to nonprofits and youth activists that work to end gun violence, establishing the Safer Tomorrow Fund. So I'm sure David Hogg is probably jumping for joy because he's got some money coming to him.
Did you see David Hogg came out to talk about the situation with Nike? Because this guy shut up already. Do we have to hear about everything from David Hogg? And he also
he's going to have a job with CNN.
He also came out and he spoke about this situation with Levi, and he talked about Brett Kavanaugh being wrong about a handgun versus the AR-15. Like, he's a gun expert now. So we take this kid so seriously.
Yeah, no, a handgun.
He's talking about, I forgot what he was talking about, but he was comparing.
Well, he also came out with this whole plane situation. And I mean, he's sitting there talking about how everybody started around him started turning into zombies, and that he barely got off the plane alive. I mean, you heard that, right?
Yeah.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah. I mean, he was there, and I mean, it wasn't the flows.
You're referring to the fact that he's been to a lot of. He seems like a crisis actor, right?
I'm surprised he wasn't on the plane with Vanilla Ice.
He certainly looks like one of.
And there I was with Vanilla Ice when everyone around us started turning into zombies.
The backup dancer. That's all he is. Listen, come on back. We're going to have Dan Newmeyer from the Dan Newmeyer Show. You don't want to miss it. Freedom on Deck.
Time to play the game!
Welcome back to Freedom on Deck on 94.9 News Now and Stimulating Talk. Make sure you go to freedomondeck.com where you can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, listen to our midweek podcast, and all the good archives from 949 with Freedom on Deck. Now, our final guest for today's program is the very talented and handsome political strategist with his own show heard Sundays from 10 to 12 right here on 949 News Now and Stimulating Talk, Dan Newmeyer. Dan, thanks for coming on the 3-year anniversary, brother.
Well, hey, happy anniversary to you guys. It's a big pleasure of mine always to be on your show, but you know how I've cried and complained about not getting on an anniversary show.
I had to do it.
So I'm very happy to be here.
I had to do it this year, you know.
Nobody else would come on. That's what it
No, listen, we got we had Lee Elci on and we had Brigitte Gabriel on. So I mean it's a big show.
Never heard of him.
So it's also our 9/11 memorial show. So I have to ask you, where were you when the World Trade Center was attacked?
Oh, well, you know what? That memory for me it never goes away.
Yeah.
And when you just said that, it snapped me back there. My daughter had just been born.
Wow.
A couple months prior, and I was getting ready to go to work, and I had the television on, and I saw the news footage of the first plane having hit the tower. And I was really shocked and stunned by it, and just thought it was a horrible tragedy. And while I was getting my stuff together to go to work, the second one hit.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, when it clicked to me that there was just something that wasn't right about the situation. And then, of course, everything that happened after that really kind of was stunning.
Yeah, sure.
We have to remember that, and we have to shape our lives and move forward, understanding that what happened, who did it, and how, we have to find ways to keep it from happening again. It was a pretty powerful moment. So,
and I think, to transition into what we're talking about, it's important that we vote in Republicans, because Republicans, I'm sorry to say it this way, keep you safer. And Dan, we have a very important election coming up in 2018 across the country, across the board, and the left has ramped up their attacks on the GOP with violence. Just this week, a GOP office in Wyoming was set on fire, and a truck was plowed into a Fox News affiliate in Dallas after Meet the Press host Cuck Todd said to fight back against Fox. How far do you think the violence from the left will go, Dan?
Well, it's really hard to say, but you and I have had conversations over the last couple of years, and as much as we want to win this election, and Republicans really hold the path to keeping our country a sovereign country with borders, language, and culture, you and I both know that there's a larger battle being fought, which really transcends party lines and is more of a globalist and an establishment problem, where people are not doing what's in the best interest. The elites are not doing what's in the best interest of American citizens, and they're not putting Americans first. So there's a lot of kind of a litmus test of candidates that we have to look at during the primary season to say, is this one of the ones who wants to, put us in backward trades deals and wants to flood the country with illegal immigrants, and they're a Republican, even though it's more blatant and open and in front of us from the Democratic Party. There's a socialist movement underfoot that we really better get on top of quick, or we're going to lose the country.
We were talking about that with Lee, that it's kind of scary to see who they're pushing, right? We see it with Cortez in New York, and we've got this one gentleman running in Florida, a complete socialist funded by George Soros. But when they actually have elected leaders like Maxine Waters telling them to behave violently and violence occurs, shouldn't they be somewhat held responsible, Dan, when things like this are happening to these GOP offices?
Yeah, I think they should be. And I think that, the Kavanaugh hearings were really a disgrace for the Democratic Party. And I think in a lot of ways, these wacky socialist people knocking out middle-of-the-road Democrats really is going to help conservatives much more, because even Clinton Democrats from the Bill Clinton era are not as leftist socialist as what we're seeing now. I mean, remember, Bill Clinton was for being tough on illegal immigration. Barack Obama was tough on illegal immigration, and that's all since changed. So there's been kind of a paradigm shift, and I think that them putting forth really wacko socialist nut job candidates out there, it really isn't going to do them a lot of good. They need to, if they're to be successful, if Democrats are to be successful, they're going to have to appeal to the people that they appealed to in the past, which were, hardworking, blue collar, blue dog Democrats and working people. And what we see is just this kind of elitist identity politics, which doesn't really relate to anybody.
Dan, what did you think of Cory Booker's "I am Spartacus" moment? And then he goes and he's releasing these sealed documents that were supposed to show Judge Kavanaugh's racial profiling, which ended up showing that the direct opposite. It seems like they're going for anything, aren't they? Are they just trying to make headlines here?
Well, Cory Booker, I mean, what kind of a dog and pony show was that? The whole thing was, they even admitted that they planned all these disruptions and everything to Kavanaugh's hearing, but it really fell flat, I think. And I think even their most ardent socialist left-wing nut jobs are angry with them because Booker didn't pull it off. He wasn't credible. It was all baloney, and so nothing really came out of that other than the fact that Judge Kavanaugh rose above all their crazy attempts to paint him as anything other than an honest conservative judge who follows the law.
And
so
aren't they just so angry, Dan, that we're going to have a conservative majority in the judicial branch that they're probably going to have to deal with for a good lengthy amount of time? You got Neil Gorsuch, very young man. You've got Kavanaugh, young enough too. And I don't want to say it this way, but foot on the banana peel, Ginsburg. And well, I'm sorry to say it, but probably whether because of health or because she passes, President Trump is probably going to put in another conservative judge, and maybe it'll be somebody even more conservative than Kavanaugh, because let's be honest, Dan, Brett Kavanaugh is a middle-of-the-road GOPer. He is not an extreme right-wing guy, and for them to try to throw a monkey wrench, oh, that's racist, I'm sorry. For them to try to stop this guy from being put in, it just seems like, they're unhinged at this point.
Well, I think we almost have to thank Obama and thank Hillary and thank all the left-wing socialist nut jobs for getting us to the point of getting a president who is going to take action, who has turned this economy around, the lowest African-American unemployment, the lowest Latino unemployment, the lowest Asian unemployment, the economy, the GDP's blowing off the charts, our trade deals with Mexico are turning around. I mean, how much better does it have to get before they actually come out and acknowledge it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they made it so they messed up so bad. Obama turned things in this country in a direction that nobody wanted to go, and so we actually ended up with a president that we wanted, that was going to take this in hand and start to correct these policies. Now, there's a lot of talk about the wall. Trump wants to get this wall built after the election, and the establishment Republicans are already scheming on how they can get extra visas in and all this other stuff. And that's the globalists working on us. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, the fight ahead is it's going to be unrelenting, and we just have to hang in there. Russia, what?
Right.
What? Russia, where? You want to? I mean, give us some evidence, or just shut up and go away.
We have political strategist and host of the Dan Newmeyer Show, Dan Newmeyer himself, on with us. Now, Dan, not only has the media underreported Trump's economic success, but now we have Barack Hussein Obama parading around the country claiming that this economic boom is actually because of his his policies. I know you've seen this.
Oh my gosh.
Is that really the type of messaging that Democrats are going to run on in 2018? Basically, blatant lies.
Well, and isn't it reminiscent of his world apology tour that he went on?
Yeah.
When he was president, it's just reminiscent of that, and it's also a sour grapes thing. I mean, let's face it. Donald Trump went in there and he started to overturn all the baloney regulations that were costing business and jobs, and the economy caught fire. I mean, things are looking better across the board, and now it's coming down to the states, which are mired down in this democratic baloney, like Connecticut, like New York, which can't get out of their own ways because the Democrats have just run them into the ground. They've made the cost of doing business, the taxes, and everything else, and only just have been enriching their special interest groups. And so, the rest of the country is booming, and the blue states are lagging behind. So hopefully that's going to facilitate change in this election. But more to your point, I think that one of the things I heard Obama trying to tell his people was that, look, you got to lay off calling conservatives racists and homophobes and bigots, because it's not true and it's not helping their cause. He can see the problem of what he's created with the identity politics. And the Democrats are going to have to confront this, that, the people sitting across the table from you who think that government should be smaller and work for the people instead of on them, that American citizens should come first before other countries in policy making, and the government should be working for us and not on us, are not racist, homophobes, and whatever. We're people who love our country, who stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance, who go to work every day and try and pay their bills and raise their families. People need to get behind that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we have some pretty good things coming up in 2018 and therefore in 2020 as well. Everybody, that was Dan Newmeyer from the Dan Newmeyer Show. Dan, thank you so much for coming on the 3-year anniversary show, brother.
Yeah, happy anniversary, and here's to 3 more for Freedom on Deck. I'm a big fan and always very honored to come on the show.
Absolutely. Everybody, that was Dan Newmeyer. Come back to Freedom on Deck. We're going to continue with our 9/11 Memorial Show.
And I've set up and tore down this stage with my own 2 hands. We've traveled this land, packed tight in minivans, and all this for the fans, girls, money, and fame. I played their game and had to scream my name. I will show no shame. I live and die for this, and if I come off soft, bitch, you on this.
Are you scared?
Devil without a cause, and I'm back with the beaver hats and Ben Davis slacks. 30-pack of strolls, 30-pack of no Rogaine in the propane flows. The chosen one, half the living truth.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to 94.9 News Now and Stimulating Talk. This is Freedom on Deck, as always. And this one, everybody's been talking about. You know it. You know the situation. The New York Times op-ed about the president, about his cabinet, about his administration, and about how this person is a top official in the cabinet, and that I work for the president, but like-minded colleagues and I vow to thwart parts of his agenda and his worst inclinations. Really, you sound like you are a traitor.
Yeah. And what are his worst inclinations? Can you specify that? I wish I could ask the person.
It's probably the wall. It's probably his immigration stance. Maybe it's the great economy, jobs, all the things that make this administration run. And you know what? I don't know who it is. I don't know if it's just a hit job by the New York Times, because I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the White House is taking it seriously. I'm reading here from MSN that the search for the author is down to a few possibilities. Sources telling that Kellyanne Conway separately said in an interview with CNN's Christine Amanpour that President Trump suspects the officials in the national security sector. What does that tell you?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like Jeff Sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Department of Justice. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or Rosenstein. I was thinking about him recently also.
It could
but it could just be like a lower level appointee of an appointee that Trump never appointed, like a leftover from the Obama administration. It could be anything. It could just be BS.
If it's BS and the White House is taking it so seriously, that worries me, because that means that their eyes being taken off the ball. But maybe that's what this was designed to do.
It's a possibility. I said that, to you guys, through the week. It's possible. If you wanted to, create chaos amongst your enemy and his camp, how do you do that? Well, you create, distrust. You create this level of paranoia. Well, are you the person? Are you the person? Nobody knows who it is.
Yeah.
So then you don't know who you can trust or who you can go to. So, you start to create chaos, and you start, basically the administration starts to rip itself apart internally. That would be the, I guess, best hopes of the New York Times or the left for putting out a piece like that. That is not true. If it is true, that's a different story. If it is true, now you got to find out and take the stance of who is it, and get him out of there.
And who are the others ones that he's speaking about that are
my colleagues
in cahoots with him or her? I guess you could say or her. But Trump called on Attorney Jeff Sessions last Friday to investigate the anonymous senior official's identity, citing national security concerns. I'm sure Jeff got right on that.
Yeah.
After exiting his bungalow.
Chet and I thought it was Jeff Sessions at the same time. We didn't even talk to each other, but we both said it on Facebook at the same time. But then we got to thinking it could be anybody. But the bottom line is, even without this op-ed, we already suspected that there were people in Trump's administration that were like holdovers from the Obama administration or just never Trumpers. And we knew that they were there, and we suspected it. So it's not even a surprise.
Well, you're hoping that's what it is. You're hoping that it's not someone that you didn't expect.
Mike Pence.
Well, Mike Pence came out right away and said that it, and you know what the real baloney slab is, that why I don't believe it's Mike Pence? They inserted something that Mike Pence always puts in his letters, or a phrase that Mike Pence uses a lot.
But something like Lone Star or something.
Right.
I can't remember the word.
He wouldn't do that. That would be the dumbest thing that you could do.
They try to make it look like it was him.
Well, yeah. So to me, it's somebody, I think it's somebody in our wheelhouse, and we're thinking about it, but I wouldn't put it past the New York Times because they put out fake stories before.
Well, keep in mind relationship that Donald Trump has with the New York Times.
Not good.
I mean, they take blows at each other at every opportunity. So I mean, he calls
the failing New York Times.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? So when he's constantly ridiculing them, they're constantly ridiculing him. I mean, it's a back and forth thing. The Sessions thing. It's a possibility. It's plausible. I mean, him and Sessions have not had a very great relationship,
and he knows he's going to be fired after the election.
He knows he's going to be fired.
Yeah, and he knows, he knows the heat's on. So it's possible. It's possible. But it'd be stupid for him, because I'll tell you right now, I'm sure there are certain non-disclosure agreements and things that he has to sign in order to have the position that he has.
That's a good point. But there's a silver lining to all this. Perhaps Trump will now look a little more closely at who he has around him. Keep the eyes on the back of his head open, and be a little bit more careful. I think that's the silver lining here.
Well, we've talked about some of the people that have been brought in. I'm not a big fan of a lot of them.
I know.
I do think it's important that the president remembers what he ran on and sticks to that messaging. I think he's trying the best that he can. I think they're trying to do everything that they can to undermine him. And to think that there aren't people in that administration right now that are doing that the way that the left operates would be naive. Of course they are.
Right.
But listen, guys, we're coming up against it. I want to thank both of you. 3 years going strong with Freedom on Deck. CV jumping on board. Doing the show with you, Brian, has been an absolute honor and a treat for me. I love all the guests that we've had on. To also thank Justin Dickerson, Richie Rivera, that have done the show with us. I also want to thank all of our big supporters like Lee Elci and Dan Newmeyer and Julio Rivera and Xander Gibb. The list goes on and on. I can't name all of you guys, but we really do appreciate it. And just remember what this week's all about in memory of 9/11. And don't miss next week, because we've got another good show for you. Brian Maloney from Media Equalizer and Jim Schreiner, the author of Jesus Christ, Enough Already. Come on back to Freedom on Deck. Same Freedom time, same Freedom station. Good day.